Hello again. Right, let's start lesson 4. This should be a bit straightforward, a little bit easier and quicker to do than lesson 3 because that's going to take most of the day. There's quite a lot to do in lesson 3. So for lesson 4 we're going to composite some sci-fi buildings into a skyline live action plate. Now we're going to use the kitbash file which contains some pre-made buildings. We need to fix the textures. We'll do our own textures because these ones don't really work very well with Arnold. But this is what happens when you open the raw kitbash scene and we get all these buildings in one scene. So what we're going to do is export kind of individual buildings. The ones that I used are going to be these 4 here. Now, I can't remember when you originally opened the kitbash, but I think everything is like one object. So in order to do that, you need to use the mesh, combine and separate tools. So I think I've already done it. I've separated it and then combined them into individual buildings now. So this is an object, this is an object, this is an object. And in order to separate them to choose the individual components, you just go under mesh, separate. And now we can see we can select the individual parts that make up that model. So I'll just click it, press up to go into the group. It creates a group when you separate them, it's quite handy. And then I'll just combine them back up. So we'll extract these from the scene. If we select all of them, we've got 4 models, shift select them or draw a box. And we will export selection and we'll save it as a .obj. It's the kind of universal image format, not image format, universal object format. Okay. Alright, so let's create a new scene and let's import our .obj. So it's going to be so it's buildings.obj. Ignore the .mtl, it's like the material file that comes with it, but we don't need that. So just import the obj. Okay, so they've come into our new scene. Oh, we zoom out, there they are. They're awfully big compared to our scene, but that's fine for now. The scale is a bit messed up. That shouldn't matter too much. So first things first, let's get them looking good with the Arnold shaders. So let's bring up our window texturing or shading editor, which is the rendering editor's Hypershade. And let's fix the shaders, turn them into AI standard surface shaders. So at the moment we've got these 4 shaders here, which are the default ones that came with the file. We have a glass, we have a metal, and we have a second one. So these are default Maya Phong shaders, and we want to make them AI standard surface shaders so they'll work best with Arnold. Rendering it out. So let's create 3 AI standard surface shaders. Just by clicking that 3 times, it's created 3 new ones here. Let's rename them. First one is going to be our metal one. Our second one. So you click on it in the top and then go over to the name bar. It's going to be our metal 2, and the third one's going to be our glass. Okay, so when we select an object, it selects the whole object. They've all been combined. So select individual parts. We need to separate the objects. We go under mesh, separate. I'm going to do that for each building. So select this one, press G. So that will separate, does the same command again. Press G. And G. I have to do it twice sometimes. Weird. Okay. So we can kind of figure out which shade is which. So we know that the white one is kind of the glass one. You can see it there. If I right click in the hypershade and go select object with material and keep that selection, go under 4, you can see that it's selected all of the glass pieces, which is great. With that selection still selected, go right click over your glass.ai standard surface shader and go assign material to selection. So that means it's going to transfer all of the standard glass Phong shaders over to the AI standard surface one. So let's click on our glass shader and go select objects with material, and now it's selected all our glass because we've done the transfer. Great, so that's the first one done. We can now delete the glass shader. Well, I've gone into a weird component mode here and a brush has come up, so just right click and go object mode. Click off that. There we go, go back out of that mode. Okay, let's do our next one. So right click, select object. This is going to be our main metal one. So right click metal one and go assign material to selection. Okay, we can delete that one. Let's select this one. Okay, this is going to be our metal 2. So right click metal 2 and assign material to selection. Alright, so we can delete those. We're just left with our 3 AI standard surface. Let's quickly tweak these. So the glass one, let's go presets, glass blend 90%. That's our glass one. Starting point, you can tinker with it a bit more, but that's pretty good for a starting point. See, it looks like glass. Metal one is going to be a little bit of metalness, a little bit more roughness. You can plug in a texture if you want. We'll just have a plain white or grey for now. Metal 2, go into metal 2, and we're going to have a little bit of metalness, a little bit more roughness. I'm going to change the colour to a kind of gold, yellowy gold colour for our metal 2. Cool. So let's see how we look in number 5. Number 6, oh, that hasn't come out right. So with the green shading just means that it didn't work for some reason. Let's have a look. Select objects with material. Okay, that's fine. Select objects with material. Building metal grey SG. Can you just undo that? Because I think I might have deleted it before assigning it for some reason. I'm just going to undo. There we are. So it's this one. Select objects with material and make it metal 2. Okay, I think that's better now. So now I can delete it. If you get that kind of bright green, it means that your shader or texture has been deleted and it can't find it. So let's just redo those. So glass was a blend 90% glass. Metal 1, bit of metalness and a bit of roughness. And metal 2, same. And go under the colour. Oh, it's already saved it there, which is good. That was our kind of gold preset. Nice. All right, we can close the hypershade, and we can see our buildings look a bit better now. Getting this weird flickering effect because the building scene is massive, and that's our clipping of our cameras. It's kind of better when we zoom in. If we select our camera, you've got the near clipping pane. If I up that to 1, it will also clean that up. But our grid's way down here, and these buildings are way off here. So I'm going to edit, delete all by type. Actually, I'm going to recombine them because Maya runs a lot better when there is one object. If you've got like thousands of individual objects or hundreds of objects, it can slow down the scene. So let's draw a box around them. Mesh, combine. Draw a box. Press G. So I'm just recombining them back as one object now. Alright, nice. So they're all back as one, and then we can just delete our history. Perfect. Select all 4 of them and Control G or Command G to create a group. Center the pivot of the group, and then we can scale them down. To get them into our grid, hold down G for, no, X, and then snap. No, oh wait, make sure you remove tool. X is grid snap. There we are. So we kind of snapped them to the grid. Okay, roughly in position. Now we can Control S, save our scene, Utopia, in the folder. Alright, we're ready to bring in the footage. Let's create a new camera. Create new camera. Go panels, perspective, camera 1. So we're inside this camera now. So change that to shot camera 1. If we go file, image plane, import image, go into our Utopia folder and find the plate 1. So it's our background plate. And we can get an idea of how we want our lighting. We know the lighting is, it's kind of near sunset, and the lighting's off to the right. And it's very warm, very kind of golden, almost like golden hour, magic hour. Now our image plane's way too close. If I zoom out, it's clipping through it, so we need to push that image plane right to the back. It's under the, with the image plane selected, if you just click on the image plane, go under image plane shape, change the depth. Let's try 1000. Okay, now now they disappear around here, which is fine, but if you want to make them further back, increase that depth even more. Okay, let's get the height of the buildings to kind of match. Select the camera. We try and figure out our perspective, get our horizon. The only way we can really use that is by using our grid. We know it's going to be pretty flat anyway. I'm going to go for a reasonably flat horizon, like that there. Select the camera. Also make sure, go into shot camera, make the focal length a bit more. I think it's going to be more like a 50mm. With the camera selected, press S key to set a key. You get a red line, and now we've locked our camera off. Now I can select the entire group and start pushing them back. So it's on the translate Z. I can't see the blue arrow, so I have to do it here by clicking translate Z and then using middle mouse click, either like sliding it forward and back, or you can just rotate and then you can see your arrow there, or you could do it in the perspective view. So there's a few ways of doing it. So I'm going to have this guy in the middle. I'm going to make him a little bit, this guy a little bit bigger. Bring this one in. Bring this one in. Bring this one in. Now I'm going to jump into my perspective and start adding a bit more depth, like pushing them behind. Maybe have this one up front, a bit smaller. Scale these down a bit, just to kind of liven it up, or kind of give it a bit of variation. Okay, cool. Remember, if I select one of them, press up, it just selects the whole group. And then remember, we're in our perspective, so you need to jump back into our shot camera, and then we can reposition it a bit better. Okay, that's nice. Something like that's cool. Okay, so we can do a render, but we got no lighting in our scene, so let's do a Arnold Lights Skydome. Go under Skydome Light, plug in a HDR file. This time we're using Chicago Loop Skydome. Color space to raw. Then go to the back door, back into our normal Skydome settings, zero out camera visibility, and set viewport to back. We press 7, we can get an idea of lighting in our scenes. It's quite dark at the moment, so we need to bring up our overall exposure here to make that about 1.5 maybe. The temperature is a bit off from our Skydome. It's very cold, it's quite blue light, so we want to make that a bit warmer. So if we go back into our color tab, go under color balance, change the color gain, click on the white box, and instead of white, make that a kind of light yellow orange. That should definitely help blend in with our scene, something like that. Okay, cool. I think we're ready for a render. So let's go into our render settings, go under common, HD 1080, go under Arnold renderer, put them like 4 and 3s are fine, adaptive off, CPU on. Also, I'll select our skydome and then make our resolution 2000. So we got a nice map resolution coming from the skydome, and samples 3. Okay, let's go under Arnold viewport renderer, press play. Okay, so our initial render is pretty decent. We need to match the lighting a bit better. So what I'm going to do is create an area light to further simulate this sunlight coming from the side. I'll stop that. So I'll go under Arnold, Lights, Area Light. Scale it right up. Bring it off to the side. Change the light shape to disc. Might help a little bit, more like a sun shape. Let's check. This is quite far away, so we really need to increase the intensity. Make sure it's aiming there. Let's try 1000. We're barely getting any highlight, so I need to, let's try 10,000, just add a 0. A little bit, let's keep adding another 0, so it's 100,000, and we're finally getting a bit of light. Let's go use color temperature and make our temperature nice and warm, so something like 3200 Kelvin is tungsten temperature, so let's go around about that. But yeah, we want it quite warm indeed. Alright, let's play it. So redoing the render. Quite nice. Okay, stop that so we can tinker with it a bit more. Let's go our skydome. I'm going to lower the overall exposure just to darken it down a bit. So I want to get most of our light source coming from this area light. That should look good when it kind of catches the sides. Okay. I might change the angle slightly. So if I zoom out, I can see it's quite difficult to see what's going on. The skydome's in the way and the image plane's in the way. I make that skydome a lot bigger. It doesn't really matter the scale on that. But you might want to jump into your perspective just so you can kind of see things a bit easier. Let's try doing it a little bit more side on. Maybe like that. Go back to my shot camera. Now I need to wiggle on the timeline just to get my camera back into position. Okay. Yeah, that lighting's a bit better. It's a little bit too dark in the shadows now, so I'm going to go back into my skydome and then just up that exposure a tiny bit. Okay. I think maybe it was a little bit too to the side. It's hard knowing exactly where it's coming from. So let's have it about there. Okay, in the last few settings we'll change. We'll select our group and we'll angle it slightly so we've got a bit of a 45 kind of degree turn on those buildings, just to kind of match some of the others. Alright, yeah, pretty good. Don't really like this gap. I'm going to close them a bit closer together. I'm going to Control D or duplicate this one and make another one. Turn it round so it doesn't look the same. Have him like on this side. Nice. It almost looks like one building, or different parts to make up one large building rather than a few separate buildings. But you can kind of play with it how you want, kind of get real creative with this scene. Okay, good. Okay, just for some finishing touches, we're going to make the shaders look a bit better. We're going to plug in some textures to the shaders. So the kit bash folder comes with some default textures we can apply to our shaders. Now let's start with metal 1. So if we click on one of our buildings, in the attribute editor we can see that we've got 3 shaders applied to this object because we've combined different objects into one. We've got metal 1, metal 2 and glass here. So let's go into metal 1 and plug in the color file folder, and let's go with the concrete diffuse white.jpg. Let's plug that in. Instead of a metal, we're going for a kind of concrete now. And then for we can lower the metalness value a little bit. And then we're going to plug in the specular roughness map next. Plug in the file folder, and we can do the glossiness one, asphalt damaged. Make sure alpha is luminance and color space is set to raw when using roughness maps. Lastly, we're going to plug in the bump in the geometry. Click on file and then click on the door to take us into the node, and we can bring up the folder. We're going to load in a bump map, concrete bump. Go to the back door and change the depth to 0.05. Nice low value for the depth. And that's our metal 1 shader now set up. Now concrete. I'll change this to concrete. Right, so let's do metal 2. Jump into metal 2, go to the color tab, file, folder. Let's go with the metal flake, light grey. Go to the back door, brings us back to the main tabs, specular roughness, file, folder. Let's go for the roughness, asphalt damage, glossiness, raw and alpha is luminance, and then the geometry, file, folder, and load in our bump map. Go to the back door and make the depth 0.05. Okay. So, specular roughness. Increase the gain a little bit, get back some of that gold colour. Okay, and see how it looks in the render. Metal 2 is very dark, to just fix that a bit. If I break the connection on our roughness map, let's have a look. No, it's still dark. I'm going to undo that. Here's our colour. This light grey is appearing too dark, so we're going to lighten that up a bit. Yeah, it's a bit better. Okay. So we've now got some textures mapped into our buildings. So renders should look a little bit more realistic now. So you can tinker with the light values, maybe crank that up a little bit more. And then when you're ready for the final render, go into viewport 2.0, bring up the render view and do an IPR or a normal render. The view's messed up in that one because we're in shot camera, so let's just go straight into an IPR. It should work. There we are, that's our shot camera render. Yeah, so wait for that to clean up, export it up, and then we can composite it in After Effects. Okay, thanks for the lesson, hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.